Today I'm going to be going through my top 5 list of horror movies directed by women. While looking through lists of movies directed by women in preparation for this, I noticed that there really aren't a lot. And so I think it's important that women make more horror, and I want to shed some light on wonderful horror movies that have already been made by females. Maybe some of them you didn't even know were directed by females. Number 5, The Invitation. The Invitation is directed by Karen Kusama. She also directed Jennifer's Body, which is a horror movie that lots of people have heard of, and that I also really like, but is not on this list. The Invitation is about a group of friends who receive an invitation to go to an old friend's house for dinner. They haven't seen each other in a very long time, and they're sort of reminiscing a little bit. Probably the most character building I think I've ever seen in a horror movie. You really know these people by the time they're dying. They're multifaceted. They do good things. They do bad things. They do crazy things. It's just nice to sort of get to sit with them for a little while. Our central character, a man dealing with the fact that he is at the house of his ex-wife. They lost a child together. It's very strange. He hasn't really come to terms with his grief, and he's sort of leery about the whole situation. As the night progresses, he realizes there's something very strange about his ex-wife and her new boyfriend, who's played by the guy who plays Dario Naharis on Game of Thrones. If you ever wanted to see him do something. He ends up being right, that there is something really weird going on. And it's really lovely and culty and weird and creepy. The tone is really wonderful the whole time, and there's a really, really neat twist at the end. I think The Invitation is a wonderful film and definitely worth checking out, and as of right now in 2019 on Netflix. Number 4 is Slumber Party Massacre by Amy Holden Jones. It's a group of high school girls who get together for a sleepover and wear very skimpy nightgowns the whole time. And they're being stalked and killed by a madman with a drill. It's pretty obvious what this whole film is poking fun at, and it's a super fun ride. The director of this movie made a film that sort of pokes fun at the slasher genre right when it was sort of at the height in the early 80s. It is still very much a back to basics slasher. There's blood, there's gore, there's boobs, there's dirty talk, there's silliness, campiness, bad acting. It's got it all. One of the first shots of the movie is the girls taking a shower after basketball practice, and the camera just lingers on their boobs for far too long and then pans down their naked body, and it's just completely nuts. However, through the movie, there's this wonderful vein of poking fun at the misogyny that horror films can sometimes have. These female characters, while all of the acting is really not that great, they're given really nice moments together where they just talk. They just talk, they have fun, they really enjoy each other's company. They're not talking about nail polish and hair and, that kind of things. And they're really into sports, and they talk about sports. And it's just an interesting sort of gender swap. The Slumber Party Massacre. I don't think you can get more campy or 80s horror slasher than that title. Number 3 is A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. It is directed by Anna Lily Amarpour. Again, I hope I'm saying that name right. It's an Iranian film that came out in 2014. It's a vampire movie. It sort of has elements of Let the Right One In, which is another movie that I really love. It's not your normal vampire story. It's about a guy who comes across this girl who happens to be a vampire, and she tries to better his life by doing things like killing people, which isn't exactly what he wants her to do. It's a really adorable love story that is also extremely violent and vicious, and has a lot of really wonderful statements about being a female in Iran. It's one of the few vampire movies that has come out recently that has struck me as being totally original. Being a vampire movie, I feel like you go through a certain amount of tropes, and this movie doesn't really go through any of the vampire tropes. It's just wholly its own. Number 2, American Psycho by Mary Harron. American Psycho is a super well-known film. It's a cult classic. I watch this movie fairly often. I would say a couple years go by, I feel the need to watch it again. This film is all about Christian Bale and all about the directing. Mary Harron and Christian Bale, they together created this absolutely wonderful classic film. At a time when classic horror wasn't really coming out. There was like a lot of teen, like slasher films coming out at the time, and this was a psychological thriller based on a book that everybody thought was impossible to bring to the screen, and she did it. The screenplay was also written by a woman, which is really cool. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that what feels like a very misogynistic, male-driven movie was actually made by women. So Mary Harron's directing in this movie is clean, it's precise, while at the same time giving you a feeling of frenzy and chaos, which is what Patrick Bateman's mind is going through. She really captured that state of pristine cleanliness and disgusting gore really, really well. Another sort of like gender stereotype in horror movie swap. The camera loves Christian Bale. The camera lingers on Christian Bale's muscles, on his butt, on his whole body. I mean, like, she really wants to play up how beautiful Christian Bale, and that's part of the character too. He thinks he's beautiful too. So that's not gratuitous. It means something to the plot. It's just fun to see a horror movie sort of really take its time admiring a male rather than some boobs. Number 1, The Babadook. The Babadook is directed by Jennifer Kent, who also wrote the movie. In the past 10 years, The Babadook stands out so brightly as one of the best horror movies that I have seen in a long, long time. It's all at once creepy, emotional, funny, off the wall, and very relatable. And I think that the Babadook as a monster is just as great as some of the classic movie monsters that we've had. She really created the grief monster, a new classic monster for horror films. The way the Babadook sounds, the way he looks, the things that he does is so familiar without having ever been used in a film before. When I felt like while watching the movie, like, wait, have I seen this before? Have I seen this monster before? And I haven't. It just, there's something so inherently scary about the top hat and the tall guy and the arms that come out and the huge grin and the weird noise he makes that is just so frightening that you feel like you've been frightened of it before. It takes the idea of grief and how we deal with it and how we can sometimes let it consume us, and how when you let it consume you, it can be really unhealthy and take over your life and ruin your life. It's a grief monster. It's just really beautifully written and really beautifully directed and beautifully acted by everybody. I mean, Essie Davis is just absolutely balls to the wall in this film. She is a masterclass in acting. I love her in The Babadook. This is my top 5. Obviously, there's a lot more movies out there directed by women. Not as many as I would like or as many as I thought, but they're out there. However, these are the top 5 that I think are definitely worth a watch and are notable. You know, there's some other ones out there that are really great. Jennifer's Body, Raw, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, not directed by Joss Whedon, directed by a woman. Also kind of not a horror, but kind of a horror, I don't know. American Mary, these are all also really great movies directed by females that you should check out. So if I left any out, or if you disagree with my list, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And that's it. I don't have anything else to say. But mostly I just want to draw attention to these great horror films that are directed by women and depict women in really wonderful ways. No, because American Psycho doesn't depict women in very wonderful ways.
There are no girls with good personalities.